Welcome back to the online classes from the Banajwar Degree College. Today, let us start with the grassland ecosystem. In the previous video lecture, I have explained to you about the forest ecosystem. Let's take up grassland ecosystem. Grassland is rich in grasses, therefore it is called as grassland. There you find not only grasses, sedges, and other herbaceous forage plants on which the animals graze upon. So such grasslands may be of different type based on climatic conditions. There are tropical grasslands or savanna, we call them, temperate grasslands, montane and alpine grasslands. So these are the different types of grasslands. Now here there are some pictures. Just let us go through. This is a tropical grassland or savanna. They call savanna where there is a huge grassland. The land is covered with the grasses in very vast area, and very few trees here and there you find that. A very few trees at distance, far distances you find. That is what called as the savanna. And then the temperate grassland in temperate regions, that is beyond the 20-degree north and 20-degree south of the equator. Beyond that region, it is temperate region. So as we see here, this is the land covered with the grasses, and many animals, herbivore mammals, are grazing upon the grass. Now, another picture here of a pasture that is nothing but grassland in tropical region, where you find these sheep are feeding upon the tropical grassland. The only difference is in temperate grassland, the temperature is usually colder, and in tropical grassland, it is warm temperature. And montane grasslands are the grasslands which are on the slopes of the mountain. As you see, this is the slope of the mountain, and a few trees also you can find there. Now let's look into the grassland food web. As we see in this picture, there are herbivores such as the zebras, elephants, okay, upon which the larger predators such as carnivores such as cheetah and hyena are dependent. They are chasing these animals and killing them for their food. And the complete area, as you see here, is covered by grasses. A very few trees here and there you find. So the elephants and the zebras represent the primary consumers, and the secondary consumers are the cheetah and hyena. And there are some scavengers also, like termites and vultures. They are called as the scavengers because they depend on the dead plant or animals that feed on the dead animals lying on the ground. Such birds are called as vultures, and similarly, termites are dependent on the forest floor where a lot of dry leaves are there. So they break down it into smaller pieces, and further those will be decomposed. So they are deriving their food from the dried leaves or fallen leaves on the ground. So they are also called as scavengers. Termites, they sometimes, you might see that huge termite mounds are built in the grasslands. And of course, the dead and decomposed decomposing organisms which are there on the soil, they will be acted upon by the fungi and bacteria. About 40% of the land area on the earth is covered by the grassland. Some authors say around 20 to 40% of the land area on the earth is covered by grassland. And grasslands are the actual kingdom of animals, we can say, because we find large number of herbivores inhabiting that area. So therefore, you find that the predators of these herbivores also are coming into these areas, and that becomes a one kind of ecosystem where there is a flow of energy from the producers to top carnivores. Now, grass is the most successful vegetation, as we know. It grows and survives even in most adverse and inhospitable conditions. That is, even if there is a shortage of water and hot climatical conditions, these grasses keep on growing. And one more important thing about the grasses or the grassland is when the animals graze upon these grasses, when they eat away the upper half parts of each leaf of the grass, or half of the grass plant is eaten up, for example, the remaining half plant will again regrow new leaves. It will not die out. So therefore, the grasses will keep on growing, and they provide the food for the herbivores. Abiotic components of the grassland, let us take up. They are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur, all major elements which are needed for supporting the life. And the soil is rich in nitrates, phosphates, and sulfates, which allow the better growth of the grasses and sedges. Biotic communities or biotic components include wide varieties of the grasses, many species of herbs and shrubs also are there, which serve as the producers. And then in savanna, we find a few trees also are there scattered at far distances. And primary consumers are the grazing animals, cows, buffaloes, deer, rabbit, mouse, and termites, etc. Secondary consumers are the snakes, jackals, fox, that are dependent on herbivores for their food. Termites can be taken as primary consumers also, as well as scavengers, because they are breaking down the dead leaves on the forest floor into fine particles, which can be easily acted upon by bacteria and fungi to decompose. Then secondary consumers are snakes, jackals, fox, that are dependent on herbivores for their food. Tertiary consumers are hawks, eagles, vultures, which prey upon primary and secondary consumers. So we see here that the food chains are very well flourishing in the grassland. Of course, the decomposers are same: bacteria, actinomycetes, and fungi. Actinomycetes are the what you call bacteria only, but their shape is long mycelia-like, and therefore they are called as actinomycetes. Mycetes actually refers to the fungal organism, so they are the bacteria only, and might be, you can say, fungi-like bacteria and the fungi. All these are the decomposers. Functions of grassland ecosystem, let us take up. Grasslands, as we know, are very, very useful for the rural community. They depend on the grasslands for grazing of their domestic animals such as cows, buffaloes, sheep, and goat, etc. So animal husbandry also depends on grassland ecosystem. Animal husbandry, as we know, rearing and bringing up the animals for human welfare, to get the milk, to get the meat, to get the eggs from the birds. That also comes under the animal husbandry. But here mainly we take up the uh, animals which are grazing animals like sheep, goat, then cows and buffaloes, right? So rearing these animals is called as animal husbandry. Now the next function, if we take up, there are some very tall grasses. They belong to grass families only. They are called as the bamboo. And these bamboo trees, they are used in making furniture, and also the inner soft part of the stem of the bamboo leaf and the tender bamboo stem and leaf, they are used in preparing food even. Grasslands prevent soil erosion because the roots of the grassland, they hold the topsoil firmly. Then grasslands also play important role in protecting biodiversity because we have seen that so many different types of the herbivores and carnivores survive on the grassland. So they are protected and they get their habitat over there. Let's take up marine ecosystem now, and as well as river or stream ecosystem. Marine ecosystem represented by the oceans and seas, etc. Oceans are the largest stable ecosystems on this earth. They are characterized by high concentration of salts and minerals. That is what the dissolved amount of the salt in the water is called as salinity, and that salinity is about 35 parts per million, or 35% we can say. And the abiotic components are the dissolved oxygen, temperature, light penetrance, and dissolved minerals in the water. They contribute towards the abiotic component of the marine ecosystem. Now let us take up the river or stream ecosystem, which are well oxygenated because they are not very deep, they are shallow, so the better diffusion of oxygen from the air is taking place, and they are low in concentration of the minerals. The salinity of the rivers and streams is measured as just 5% or 5 parts per million. So abiotic factors of the rivers and streams, if you take up the freshwater ecosystem here, the abiotic factors are the greater penetration of light, which may reach up to the bottom, then comparatively less dissolved minerals, but higher concentration of dissolved oxygen that supports many living organisms. Now let's take up the biotic components of these two ecosystems. Biotic component of the oceans or marine ecosystem, if you take up, they are the producers such as the phytoplanktons and large marine plants. Diatoms and dinoflagellates are the phytoplanktons, and seaweeds such as the green algae, that is chlorophyceae, brown algae belonging to phaeophyceae, and red algae belonging to rhodophyceae. These are the major macrophytes, you can say, the larger plants in the seawater. Along with these, the phytoplanktons that make up the producer section of the biotic component of the marine ecosystem. Other than this, even the angiosperms like eel grasses and Zostera, and Philospadics. In shallow coasts, we are finding all these plants which come under the angiosperms. So not only algae, angiosperms also you find in the very shallow water along the coasts, which are of course food for herbivore fish and mollusks. Then biotic components of the freshwater ecosystem, the streams and rivers, which are the lotic ecosystem, where the water keeps flowing all the time. So what are the biotic components? Let's see. Producers mainly are the biofilm. They form the biofilm, a combination of diatoms, bacteria, algae, and plankton that exist as a thin film on the bed of the stream or river, or on the rocks at the bottom of the river or stream. As because the phytoplanktons cannot remain on the surface water because of the high velocity of the water. So the microorganisms, bacteria, algae, and various planktons, they form a biofilm on the bottom of the river or stream. Then, as we know that the river or stream ecosystem is a lotic ecosystem where water is flowing all the time with high velocity. So therefore, the floating planktons cannot maintain their population in fast-flowing streams. We find them in stagnant water or the lentic ecosystems such as the ponds and lakes. Now let's take up the consumers in the oceans or the marine ecosystem. First, taking up the primary consumers, which are crustaceans, mollusks, and herbivore fish. Then secondary consumers are the carnivore fish like herring, scat, mackerel, etc. And the tertiary consumers, remember that secondary consumers are the organisms which feed on the primary consumers. So these secondary consumers can be taken as the primary carnivore because they are feeding upon crustaceans, mollusks, and herbaceous or herbivorous fish. Now the tertiary consumers, if we take up, tertiary consumers in the ocean are mainly the cod and haddock, as well as tuna, barracuda, groupers, tuna, barracuda, haddock, and cod. These are the larger fish varieties which are feeding upon the smaller fishes. And along with this, again, there are some mammals, aquatic mammals like seals, sea lion, and even some invertebrates, large invertebrates like jellyfish. Okay, they are coming under the tertiary consumers, as we know that jellyfish can even prey upon or feed upon the fishes. Then we have the other mammals like dolphins, which also are the tertiary consumers. Then bony fishes, moray eel. Then the reptiles like the turtles. Then other large fishes like the sharks, and the mammals such as even the whales. Right? All these coming under the tertiary consumers. Great white shark and okra whales are the apex predators. We call apex predators are nothing but top carnivores in the aquatic ecosystem, mainly the oceans. So they are the largest predators in the ocean, and there is no predator upon them. Now lastly, the decomposers in the ocean are of course bacteria and fungi. Then if you take up the consumers in the lotic ecosystem or the river and the streams, a whole set of the consumers are given here in one paragraph. I have typed it up as the flatworms, leeches, water insects, snails, fish, and crocodiles, and many birds and mammals also get their food from the rivers. So we see there that there are some small flatworms feeding on the vegetation, Then there are leeches which are feeding upon the other, that is, they are the, we call them as the fangivores. Fangivores means blood sucking or blood feeding organisms. So leeches suck the blood from the other vertebrates, like the large fishes or even the crocodiles and other larger animals in the aquatic ecosystem. Then there are snails, which are the herbivores feeding on the vegetation in the aquatic system, seaweeds, not seaweeds, we call them as the aquatic plants, uh, the freshwater varieties of the aquatic weeds we have there. And then many birds and mammals also visit the river to get their food. So very good food web is connected with the river and stream ecosystem. Then decomposers in the river or stream are, as usual, bacteria and fungi. Now here, oceanic food web and river food web is given to further emphasize how the ecosystem is running smoothly there. We find in the oceanic food web, which begins with the phytoplanktons, on which the zooplanktons are dependent for their food and energy requirement. So zooplanktons become the food for squids, for even the cod fish, and many krill, small crustaceans. They are depending upon the phytoplanktons and krills. Here it is not mentioned. Krills are the food for large whale, which collect their food in the form of planktons because they have the baleen whale, for example. They have a baleen or a filtering structure in their mouth that holds the tiny crustaceans and planktons inside and only let out the water so that they swallow these organisms. And krills are also eaten up by the penguins. So we see here that the squids and penguins, as well as the cods, these are eaten up by the leopard seal. So leopard seal can be taken at the secondary consumer level as well as the tertiary consumer level, because if you take up the another segment of the food web here, phytoplankton, on which the zooplanktons are the primary consumers, squids are the secondary consumers, and leopard seal becomes tertiary consumers, like that. So it has the position of both secondary and tertiary consumers in this food web. And similarly, we find that the elephant seal, which also feeds upon the squids, right, is one of the large seals in the aquatic ecosystem, that is in oceans. But even the penguins and elephant seal, as well as the leopard seals, are not safe. They are hunted by the killer whales. So killer whales represent the top carnivore here. And let's take up the river food web, where we have the producers as the diatoms and the aquatic plants. Okay, snails will be depending on the diatoms and some smaller invertebrate suckers which feed upon the diatoms, and then the aquatic plants, snails as well as the crayfish are the food for ducks. So ducks are omnivore type of organisms, and they have their position in the food web as the primary consumer also, secondary consumer also. And then we have bacteria, the blue-green algae, which are also the bacteria. They are growing on the submerged uh, rocks in the rivers and streams, and these will be the food for crayfishes and as well as the fingernail clams. Clams are mollusks, crayfish are the crustaceans, and these two are the food for raccoons again. And raccoons are raccoons are the mammals, small mammals, and then we find the greater blue heron, a bird visiting the streams and rivers that will be feeding upon the sunfish and suckers. Sunfish, in turn, is depending upon the aquatic insects called aquatic beetles, and these aquatic beetles are even preyed upon by the bats. So, like this, the food web in the rivers and stream is also well established. Now, functions of aquatic ecosystems, let's take up first about the oceans and then the rivers and streams. Oceans are the very good source of seafood. Seafood such as the fish, crabs, mollusks, prawns, and crayfishes are actually consumed by the coastal communities. Fishing is one of the important trade, and by export of the sea wealth, that's the fish and other seafood, countries are earning valuable foreign exchange. But so economically, it is more beneficial. And then fossil fuel or the crude oil, which is extracted from the seabed, which is formed in millions of years by the uh, slow decomposition under very high temperature and pressure of the, dead atoms, which gradually change into or decompose to form. It's a different type of decomposition where it is changing into the crude oil or hydrocarbons from which we extract the petroleum and diesel. So that's also a valuable product from the ocean. And then if you take up the rivers and streams, they are main source of water, drinking water, especially for the human beings and all other organisms and all other terrestrial animals, mammals. Then that's a source of drinking water, as well as we use this water for other household purposes, for different utilizations, and for irrigation purpose also. Rivers are very important as long as irrigation of the agricultural land is concerned. So India is agricultural country, agriculture based country. So we are benefiting from these rivers. So rivers are therefore cradles of human civilizations because since the beginning of human civilization, humans have settled near the banks of river, and therefore in the history, in the ancient times, you find that the human civilization has risen up, or the cities, or the early cities, or the civilization are seen only on the banks of the river. Seawater is used in extraction of the common salt even, and most valuable natural pearls are also from the seawater. Pinctada vulgaris is one of the uh, species of the oysters, mollusks called as pearl oysters, and these pearl oysters are responsible for producing the pearls. Dear students, you might be knowing how the pearls are made by these organisms. What happens is, it's a bivalve. Whenever a small piece of the sand particle or any gravel enters into the shell of living pearl oyster, this particular particle, hard particle, will be irritating or causing um, friction on the surface of the body of the animal is very soft inside the shell. So these are soft-bodied animals, we know, the mollusks. So what these pearl oyster mollusks do is, from their mantle, they secrete one kind of protein called as mother of pearl, and that coats the sand particle or that irritating object in several layers, hundreds of layers, which gradually solidify, and these are all transparent layers, so it makes it into a pearl, and that is how we are extracting pearls from these organisms. Oceans protect and conserve valuable aquatic biodiversity even, and assist in hydrological cycle, thereby maintaining the timely rainfall. How they help in hydrological cycle? That is, lot of the water is in the ocean. About 71% of the surface of the earth is covered by the oceans and seas. So, the huge amount of water will be evaporating from these surfaces and making the clouds, and that result into the rainfall. So they are the source of rainfall also. Oceans are cheapest way of transport, even of goods, and even for traveling of the people from one country to another country. In olden days, oceans and seas only the means of, or the media for transport, and people used to travel in the ships from one country to another country for trade and business. In freshwater also, that is the rivers and the streams, the large number of species of food fish, the edible fish, are living, and these freshwater fish, crab, bivalves, mollusks, snails, and prawns are the food for human beings, and therefore the fishing activities is also going on in the rivers and the springs, the streams. Okay, and fishermen communities get their livelihood by selling fish only. Hydroelectric power stations, as we know, they depend on the river water, especially when the river water is falling from the height from a mountain, it forms the falls, and the falls present in the what you call as the kinetic energy in the form of the flowing water, that is converted to electricity by using the turbine. So that's the hydroelectricity generation, and for that also we utilize these sources, that is the falls, waterfalls, and the rivers. By constructing dams on these rivers, we utilize the water of the fresh water of the rivers and streams for generating electricity. Now, agriculture is mainly dependent on rivers for water supply and irrigation. Now, let's take up the pond ecosystem, which is the only example I have taken here for the lentic type of the ecosystem, the aquatic ecosystem where the water is stagnant. So it is self-sufficient and self-regulating ecosystem where the living medium is fresh water. Okay, abiotic components are light, water, organic and inorganic substances which are dissolved in the water, and the carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and phosphorus, as well as calcium, which are the life supporting elements. These elements are also found in the pond water in the form of salts, and a small amount of carbohydrates and lipids are also found in the pond water, which are released by some of the aquatic weeds. Then producers are the phytoplanktons, submerged vegetation, floating weeds, as well as the emergent plants on the edges of the or the banks of the pond. Then primary consumers are zooplankton, as because the stagnant water is not flowing, so you find there large number of zooplanktons on the surface of the water, zooplanktons as well as phytoplanktons living there. So phytoplanktons are the food for zooplanktons, and some ciliates, flagellates, protozoans, which are coming under the protista. Okay, that also make up the community of the primary consumer level, and then secondary consumers are the insects and fish which feed upon the primary consumers. Then tertiary consumers in a pond are the large fish that prey upon small ones. And finally, the decomposers here also are fungi, that is Aspergillus, Cephalosporum, Pythium, etc. And Actinomycetes bacteria. These help in decomposition. Now let us take up another picture here, a drawing of what is called a pond ecosystem. We can very well see here all the types of the organisms which are there in the food chain and food web are shown here. We find here in the bottom of the pond, in the soil, there are decomposers, which are mainly the bacteria and actinomycetes. And then we have here the algae and other phytoplanktons growing in the water of the pond. Then some aquatic weeds, okay, as well as here in this circle, what is shown is the diatoms, which are the major phytoplanktons, which are present in large number. They are microscopic, they are transparent also, so therefore we can't see them. Though they are in very large number, they are microscopic. They do not give any color to the surface of the water because most of them are transparent. And these phytoplanktons will be the food for zooplanktons, which are the larvae of the crustaceans and other invertebrates, and some arrowworms and the larvae of some aquatic insects, right? They constitute the zooplanktons and they feed upon the phytoplankton. And zooplanktons are the food for the small fishes, and these small fishes are eaten up by the larger fishes. Okay, some fish are the herbivore fish which feed upon the aquatic weeds inside the pond. Similarly, if you find here the aquatic birds getting their food in the form of fish, right? Like for example, ducks and the pond heron here. Okay, and there are some frogs also, as you see here. One frog sitting on the leaf of a lotus plant. So lotus and so many other floating vegetation also you find, and emergent vegetation along the bank of the pond also are seen. Even the snakes, insects are fed upon by the frogs as well as the snakes and the insect-eating birds, whereas the hawks prey upon the snakes as well as the insect-eating birds, and ducks even feed upon the grasshoppers. So we find here the organisms interconnected for their food, and they form a well-established food web. So can you tell me what level of the what you call the food level or trophic level, at which trophic level the large birds such as the heron are here shown in this picture? Yes, think of. As we see here, pond heron is feeding on the fishes, which in turn are feeding upon the seaweeds. So the aquatic plants, freshwater weeds here. So these aquatic plants, on which the primary consumers are the smaller fishes, and therefore the pond heron becomes secondary consumer. The top carnivore is of course the hawk or the eagle. Lastly, let us know about the desert ecosystem. Some facts about the desert ecosystem. Desert land of low rainfall, less than 25 centimeters per year. Desert is a land of low rainfall. Rainfall is below 25 centimeters per year, and about 1 billion people live in the desert area all over the world. Generally, very less number of plants and animals live in desert as the climatical conditions are very extreme and there is a scarcity of water that is a major problem. Types of deserts. Desert ecosystems can be further divided into hot and dry desert, semi-arid deserts, coastal and cold deserts. These three different types of deserts are there. What are the abiotic components of the desert? Let us see. Water and very high temperature or sometimes sub-zero temperature, both extreme climates, very hot or very cold, are the abiotic factors of the desert ecosystem. Producers in desert ecosystem are very few. There are few species of shrubs, cacti, prickly pears, and some species of grasses, and a few trees can grow there. Plants are adapted to reduce evaporation of water by having thick cuticles and sunken stomata in their leaves. Barks of the trees are also highly thickened in order to reduce the loss of water. What are the consumers in the desert ecosystem? They are mainly the insects and reptiles, as well as nocturnal rodents. Nocturnal means they come out at the night only. Daytime they will be hiding in the burrows. They are sleeping at the daytime and they are active only at the night time. They come out for search of the food and mate at the night time. So they are called as nocturnal rodents. And some birds and the large mammals on the desert are camels. So they form the consumer section of the desert ecosystem. And decomposers are, of course, very few because of poor vegetation. Of course, decomposers comprise of the bacteria and fungi, but here decomposers are very, very few in number. So that's all.